Homage to the root teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The supreme Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered, even in millions of kalpas. Now we are able to hear, study and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, please generate the supreme bodhicitta. Next, we'll study the words of my perfect teacher. We're currently discussing how to avoid the 3 defects of the vessel when listening to teachings. With that, the brief overview is now complete. Now we can go on and expand on the 3 defects mentioned above. As Padampa Rinpoche, the Indian sage, once said, "That's Padampa Sangye," from India. He was a very famous Mahasiddha, a great accomplished master in the history of Tibetan Buddhism. According to the historical records, he may have visited Tibet 5 times. And in some Tibetan historical records, they said he lived for over 500 years. According to some Han Chinese Buddhism historical records, he is said to have entered parinirvana in the Vajra cave on Mount Wutai. It's said that he entered the Vajra cave without abandoning his body. I've read such history before. Anyway, he was the famous founder of the Prajnaparamita-based tradition of Chod, a practice of cutting through ego clinging in Tibet. Padampa Sangye had many pith instructions, essential concentrated teachings on medicine, on Prajnaparamita, and on Chod. This venerable master used the following similes to show us how to listen, contemplate, and practice the Dharma. Listen to the teachings like a deer listening to music. Contemplate them like a northern nomad shearing sheep. Meditate on them like a mute person savoring food. Practice them like a hungry yak eating grass. Reach the fruition like clouds dispersing and the sun coming forth. Here he gives 5 vivid similes. They illustrate the entire process, listening to the Dharma, contemplating it, meditating on it, putting it into practice, and finally attaining the fruition of Buddhahood. This instruction is very crucial. In fact, many instructional texts discuss the view, meditation, action, and fruition. And the same principle applies. At the very beginning, one needs to start by listening, because this is how the correct view is formed. When we were just born and first came to this world, did we have the correct view of Buddhism? Absolutely not. Except for a very few reincarnated tulkus who can actually recall their past lives. When ordinary people first come into this world, they can't even understand basic worldly knowledge, let alone grasp the Buddhist view. So in order to develop the correct view, one needs to rely heavily on the teachings of qualified teachers. Only then can the correct view arise in one's mind stream. Think about it. There are so many complex fields of study and doctrines in this world, and yet all of us here have had the fortune to encounter the wisdom of Buddhism. This must be due to the merit accumulated in our previous lives. It's indeed very rare. I often reflect on this. Sometimes, when I go to the Xinhua bookstore, when I see all kinds of worldly books in front of me, I deeply feel that. Buddhism is the greatest knowledge among everything here. But if I didn't have the sublime karmic connection, how could I have encountered a Buddhist teacher among so many other teachers? Sometimes I feel a profound sense of contentment and joy in my heart. I feel that among all the knowledge in the world, what I now possess, speaking in modern terms, is the most scientific, the most complete, and the most perfect doctrine. I devote my entire life's effort and time to this, and it's been extremely worthwhile and meaningful. So we should first listen to the Dharma. When listening to the Dharma, be like a deer listening to music. This will be explained in more detail below. Then, when contemplating. That's to say, after you have listened to any teachings from a master, you should contemplate its meaning like a northern nomad shearing sheep. Here, when Patrul Rinpoche says northern nomad, he's referring to people from areas like Yushu and Qinghai. When they shear sheep, whether it's lamb or adult sheep, they'll all be sheared thoroughly. Especially in spring, all fleece of a sheep is completely removed with scissors. When shearing, the shearers don't have the habit of leaving part of the wool on the front or hind legs. They just shear it all off. Similarly, when contemplating the Dharma, you shouldn't pick and choose among the teachings given by the master. take them all in without leaving anything out. For instance, when discussing the preciousness of human life, all its analogies, numerical comparisons, and the cause and effect of its rarity should be contemplated one by one. The Dharma is like a very sweet candy. Whichever part you taste, it will be sweet. You shouldn't let your discursive thoughts pick and choose, thinking that only some parts of today's teaching are worth contemplating. Every aspect of the teaching holds value and deserves reflection. Such preferences are caused by our conceptual thoughts. Instead, we should repeatedly contemplate all the contents of the teachings. This is the second simile. The next simile is that when we meditate, it should be like a mute person savoring food. For example, someone who cannot speak. When they eat something sour, sweet, or spicy, they can fully taste its flavor. They definitely experience the sensation, but they simply can't put it into words. Just as the saying goes, like a mute eating candy. We should also have this kind of sensation. So when we meditate, we should really taste its flavor as well. For example, when meditating on the preciousness of human life, if you merely sit with your eyes closed for a while, or sit for a while without thinking of anything, this won't bring much benefit to your practice. What you should do is think deeply about how precious human life is. Contemplate it again and again until you get some feeling for it. As people often say, truly feel it. You'll taste the flavor of the Dharma when you feel it. So now, when meditating, you should first contemplate. Because without contemplation, you can't taste the Dharma. And thinking about the Dharma superficially isn't enough. You must savor the Dharma's flavor in depth. That's to say, you should savor every principle in Buddhism, not just the pinnacle teachings such as Mahamudra or Dzogchen, even for the principles of impermanence of life or karma and its effects in the common preliminary practices. If you can fully savor each of these in your mind and contemplate them carefully, you should be able to taste their profound essence. So when meditating, we should meditate in this way. Then when it comes to practice, because you've already meditated, now it's time to put it into practice. Take the preciousness of human life, for example. It's not enough to just think about it occasionally and feel you've tasted it. It's not enough. In the process of practice, you need to put it into action properly and with strong motivation. The same as the example we gave earlier. If a hungry yak finds some grass, it will eat all the grass without leaving any behind. Similarly, when we now practice these Dharma teachings, whether it's the preciousness of human life or the impermanence of life, every teaching that has been discussed and contemplated should be put directly into practice through our actions. Finally, when it comes to attaining fruition, it doesn't necessarily mean achieving the state of an arhat or Buddha. That's not what it means. Practicing each Dharma teaching ultimately leads to a certain fruition. And when you gain such fruition, it's not a vague state, nor is it something indescribable. It's not like that. For example, after practicing the impermanence of life, you have genuinely developed a firm understanding of such impermanence in your heart. Whether you're walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, in every moment of daily life, you come to realize, everything is indeed impermanent. Nothing in this world has any lasting significance. All misconceptions and doubts have been removed. At this time, it's like the sunlight bursting through the clouds, emitting radiant light. It's very clear, not a vague state at all. But when practitioners haven't fully developed the conditions of listening, contemplating, and practicing, when they contemplate or visualize, it's always hazy. Even when you believe you have finally attained the fruition after practicing a teaching, you're still unclear, as if you're in a fog. This indicates that the fruition hasn't really been achieved. The above illustrates the 5 stages of practicing the Dharma through 5 different similes. In fact, every sentence and simile in the words of my perfect teacher carries a very profound meaning. If we, as practitioners, can gradually understand each principle well and then contemplate it deeply, as a result, our behavior will definitely be transformed. So this time, I want to teach the words of my perfect teacher in great detail. Although my wisdom is limited, but I can honestly tell you this. During my own study and practice, Every single principle has deeply moved me. Every single word or phrase of these principles has become deeply integrated into my heart. If I were to bring them all out now, due to my knowledge, language, and various other constraints, it would be somewhat difficult to express the teachings completely. But I think if we can contemplate together, sometimes it might help to open our mind. Studying together in this way might also benefit us in understanding the teachings. These 5 similes illustrate the entire process of studying the Dharma. Here, the main focus is on listening to the Dharma, specifically that we should be fully concentrated when we listen. The other 4 similes aren't elaborated in detail here. Now, the original text says, when listening to the Dharma, you should be like a deer, completely enchanted by the sound of the veena. Even if a hidden hunter were to shoot a poisoned arrow at the deer, it wouldn't even notice. Now, let's look more closely at this simile. Some animals, such as deer, generally have a habitual tendency of loving to listen to the sound of the veena, a type of string instrument. An old saying tells that skilled hunters in ancient times would play music to lure animals closer to them, making it easier to shoot those music-loving animals with poisoned arrows. This analogy illustrates when the animals hear the sound they're fond of, they listen wholeheartedly and attentively, that they neither get distracted nor run away. Their highly concentrated state of mind is hard to describe in words. Through this simile, we should understand that, in the process of listening to the Dharma, we should also strive to achieve such deep concentration that every pore on our body tingles, tears well up in our eyes, and we put our palms together, never letting any other thought get in the way. So one's behavior and attitude are very important when listening to the Dharma. It's essential that we have deep devotion, respect, and pure faith, whether in front of the teacher or nowadays through other means. That allows the teacher's voices to be transmitted to your ears. This is very important, because once you have this particularly rare and sincere faith, your behavior and attitude will certainly reflect it. Some people who have never heard the Dharma before, when they first encounter a teacher and hear them teach the Dharma, they feel as if they've actually obtained the nectar of immortality. When they listen to teachings, their entire body responds. Every pore tingles, tears well up, and they focus with full concentration. They fold their hands and listen respectfully. One can discern sincere faith from their expression, eyes, posture, and overall demeanor. Whenever any teacher transmits Dharma, we must concentrate and strive to achieve the state taught here. After all, our attitude always reflects the quality of our practice. If you listen to a teaching reluctantly or feel sleepy or wear an unhappy expression or hide in a corner so that the teacher can't see you at all, of course, sometimes due to the settings in the assembly hall or other arrangement, we might have to hide occasionally, but there's no need to do so every day as we're not thieves. If conditions allow and there's no particular reason to hide, we should have a smile on our face in front of the teacher, listening and receiving the teachings with an attitude full of joy and a happy expression. In this way, it becomes easier to absorb the teachings given by the teacher. In fact, the relationship between teachers and students is also like this. Sometimes when we visit schools, we can tell just from the way certain students behave during class, they're clearly not going to learn anything. You can see them either sitting improperly or gazing out of the classroom, or looking at the teacher with particularly resentful and contemptuous eyes. In this case, it's indeed difficult for you to fully receive the teacher's knowledge into your heart. In the same way, we can use such worldly examples to illustrate that maintaining concentration and proper postures while listening to the Dharma is crucial, because listening to the Dharma is indeed very auspicious. Those who listen to the Dharma teachings are respected not only by humans, but many non-human beings in this world also revere the ones listening to the Dharma. I remember there's a sutra called the Unprecedented Causes and Conditions Sutra. It talks a lot about the merits of listening to the Dharma. One of the verses says, "Through hearing, one abandons non-Dharma and reaches the place of immortality. Sages venerate hearing, and so do the gods." This means that through listening to the Dharma, we can abandon all non-virtuous things. And it leads us to the state of immortality and liberation. Those who listen to the Dharma, wherever they are respected by virtuous worldly beings like rishis and Brahmins. Even the gods from the heavenly realms come to listen to the Dharma. When we perform some worldly good actions, the gods usually don't show up due to their pride. But when someone is listening to the Dharma, they'll also be present to listen respectfully. As the king of aspirations of Samantabhadra says, many Tibetan masters recite this verse when they begin teaching in Tibetan. Lahadang ludang nujin drudzedang in the languages of gods, nagas, yakshas, and kumbhandas, midang mimayin paiche dang yang as well as humans and non-humans, drowakun gidra namjinepa in all the languages of sentient beings. Tamcheka du dag gicho 10 I shall expound the Dharma. Many teachers recite it like this, but I don't dare to compare myself to those great masters, so I dare not emulate their chantings with mudra. In any case, the key point here is that we must listen to the teachings with full concentration. This is extremely important. As we have given examples before, just like nowadays, there are many fans of celebrities, such as fans of pop singers or internet fans. In our context, we, as practitioners, can be called Dharma fans. After hearing the Dharma, you should be completely immersed in it. When the teacher is teaching, you've been drawn, almost without noticing, into the world the teacher is describing. Your mind should remain focused. Only then can you receive the benefits of the Dharma. As the Bodhisattva Bhumi also says, listen attentively, abide in reverence. With all your heart, contemplate what you hear, which means that you must listen intently. Your mind should carefully remember all the teachings that are given. In what way should the mind retain the teachings? We should listen respectfully and attentively, keeping the teachings in mind with full devotion. Try to eradicate all kinds of discursive thoughts. Surely you can set aside other concerns for just 1 or 2 hours, right? Please don't let your mind wander during the teaching. That's the point here. Otherwise, it isn't enough to merely be physically present. While your mind wanders and you open the floodgates of idle chatter, saying whatever you like and looking around everywhere, all of these are inappropriate. You should listen sincerely. For a few people, even though their bodies are physically present among those listening to the Dharma, sitting amongst the crowd, they may appear to be behaving properly, while some display improper movements because they're absent-minded. Although their bodies are sitting among those listening to the Dharma, their minds are constantly wandering, thinking about this and that. Full of discursive thoughts, the body is here, but the mind isn't. They don't contemplate on the things they should, but wonder about many things they shouldn't. Just as Draka Rinpoche once said, during one class, some people have traveled around the entire world in their minds. After the class is over, having toured the entire dream world in their minds, they come back to the reality. They haven't remembered anything of what the teacher taught when the teacher says the class is over. Meanwhile, all those fantasies and daydreams, you've gone through every single one of them. This is unhelpful, because what should be thought about is the meaning of the Dharma. Some people with heavy karmic burden often have their minds elsewhere during class. Of course, some of this may simply be how things appear. Just as Changyang Gyatso once said in his song, what should be thought of, such as the teacher's face, can't be visualized in one's mind. What shouldn't be thought of, the lover's face, always appears before one's eyes. Some of Changyang Gyatso's songs are considered as worldly love songs on the surface, but they actually resonate with the mindset of ordinary people. Some also speak of various worldly afflictions directly, which mundane people perceive as ordinary songs, but they actually contain many profound practice instructions. At that time, although his life experience had a mysterious part, his spiritual songs have been passed down till now. Different people from various cultures receive different benefits from his songs. For example, worldly people who have strong covetousness, who place great importance on relationships, they can use the songs to defend themselves. There are also some practitioners who use some of his teachings. He said, If according to, how was it said? I forgot. How is it expressed in Chinese? Never mind. If you're willing to transfer this longing to the path of Dharma, how difficult can it be to attain Buddhahood in this life? Yes, if you think in this way, even attaining Buddhahood in this life is possible. That's the kind of thing he was saying. So try to stop the many scattered and discursive thoughts when listening to the Dharma. Especially when listening to the teachings, we must not talk. Here, the original text explains this phenomenon in another tone, opening the door to the spiritual treasury of worthless chatter. Because some people become especially talkative once they start gossiping or engaging in idle talk. But if you ask them to discuss the principles of the Dharma, they're unable to say anything, entering a state of silence. Such people must not talk during class. Otherwise, it will destroy the virtuous roots of both themselves and others. As originally, everyone was listening attentively to the teacher's instructions. If someone nearby starts talking, this interrupts the transmission, and other people can't hear the Dharma. Moreover, such a person creates terrible negative karma, which could even lead to rebirth as a parrot in future lives. So we must remember that during the short time we spend listening to the Dharma, our behavior really needs to be proper and aligned with the Dharma. Nowadays, most fellow practitioners living in cities are gradually behaving more appropriately when listening to the Dharma. I've seen people in some places before. Because they had never heard the Dharma before, they always felt that listening to teachings was just like attending a public meeting. When some Dharma teachers were giving teachings, they didn't know the basic etiquette. It looked quite pitiful. But correcting them one by one wasn't realistic. In 1991, when I went to a place in Sichuan, about 100 people came to the teachings. Every single person there displayed all the defects of an improper Dharma vessel. So I was very disappointed because there was no way to address them one by one. But recently, we have been using various methods to spread Buddhism teachings, especially the modes of conduct when listening to the Dharma in Tibetan Buddhism. This aspect has been explained clearly in the Buddhist sutras and in the precepts that those who have studied the precepts all understand it very well. We can therefore tell from people's behavior when listening to the Dharma. Oh, this person's practice must be quite good, because all their behaviors are proper and in accordance with the Dharma when listening to the Dharma. We can also see and infer from their behavior that they may have generated bodhicitta in their hearts, or have developed the pure view of Vajrayana. In the future, we should try our best to achieve these proper behaviors. When listening to teachings, you should even stop chanting sutras, counting mantras, or whatever other meritorious activities you may be doing, and concentrate single-mindedly whilst listening to the Dharma, as mentioned before. During the period of listening to the Dharma, some improper behaviors, such as chatting, gossiping, standing while listening, leaving in the middle of a teaching, interrupt hearing the oral transmission, walking around or eating during the teaching, all these various inappropriate behaviors should be set aside. Even the virtuous actions we usually perform, such as reciting mantras or Buddha's name, using prayer beads or holding prayer wheels in our hands, etc., which originally have certain merits, but even these should be set aside during the teaching, because listening to the Dharma is far more important. The merit of listening to the Dharma far surpasses reciting a single mantra or chanting a Buddha's name a few times. The merit of the latter can't compare to listening to the teachings in millions of ways. So when listening to the Dharma, all of these actions should be stopped. Some local people in Tibet who don't understand Buddhism keep turning a prayer wheel attentively when the Dharma teacher is giving teachings. This isn't appropriate. Although turning a prayer wheel once has great merit, the mind should be focused on the teachings when listening to the Dharma. All the teachers and great masters agree with this. During listening, you should also put down your prayer beads. Some people feel that the time shouldn't be wasted during receiving Dharma teachings. So they keep moving their lips, reciting silently. Even though they don't make a sound, they keep reciting. This is also inappropriate. If someone holds a supplication book or recites some sutras or mantras during listening, this shows that the person hasn't yet understood the principle of listening to the Dharma. If you understand such principle, you'll know that the merits of listening far surpass these actions. So during that time, you don't need to do anything else. There was an old Khenpo, one of Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's disciples. When teaching the words of my perfect teacher, he said that although he had recited several 100 million heart mantras in his lifetime, he felt his greatest confidence came from having listened to some Dharma teachings. What he felt was most meritorious and reliable, whether facing death or throughout many lifetimes, was having listened to the Dharma. The several 100 million heart mantras he recited do have merit. But this isn't what he relied on most. There are people who have a weak foundation in listening and contemplation of the Dharma and tend to have mistaken priorities. Even including a few people in our college I've seen before, they think that reciting mantras is very important. So they keep reciting mantras or turning a prayer wheel while listening to the teachings. These aren't allowed at all. In the future, when listening to any teachings, unless the teacher has already given permission to recite mantras during transmission, which doesn't require understanding the meaning of teachings attentively, one should always listen with full concentration. There are times in Tibetan Buddhism, special permission is given to recite mantras while listening. But apart from these scenarios, you must concentrate when any teacher is giving teachings. I've even seen some people in Han areas sitting on the sofa, holding a prayer wheel and watching the teacher's class on TV. They think that holding prayer beads in the left hand, a prayer wheel in the right hand. Eyes watching the TV, ears listening to the sound, and they think they've engaged all 6 senses with the Dharma. But I don't think this is right. When you're listening to a teaching, you should put down all other things. Even in front of the TV, if you really want to receive the teaching, all other things should be put aside completely. Then you should wholeheartedly look at the Dharma textbook while listening. This is the proper behavior. On the other hand, some people don't look at the text at all, which is also not reasonable. Because when listening to the Dharma, usually the teacher is explaining each word and sentence to you during the explanation. Unless you can memorize all the Dharma meanings front to back, that's a different story. Otherwise, generally speaking, you should follow along the text while listening to the teacher's teaching, since you're most likely not familiar with the text yet, and at other times you should look up from the book to the teacher. That's reasonable, isn't it? Having listened attentively to these teachings, it's essential to maintain their meaning firmly in your mind, never letting them fade from memory. After listening, it's not enough to have just heard it. If it goes in one ear and out the other, it's all gone. You may have heard everything, but after that, if you don't remember a single word or scripture, that's not working either. What's more, what you remember should be continually put into practice and regularly utilize it in real life. As the great sage Buddha Shakyamuni himself said, "I have shown you the methods that lead to liberation, but you should know that liberation depends upon yourself." Listening to the Dharma is indeed very significant. For any teacher, the best way to genuinely help and guide disciples is to teach them the Dharma. Of course, there are some other approaches, but they're very rare. For example, among the disciples of Marpa Lotsawa in the Kagyu lineage, they were asked to practice austerities continuously. And finally, the nature of mind was directly pointed out for them through various instructions. Such rare cases do exist, but this approach isn't encouraged for people with ordinary capacities. It should be said that the relationship between all teachers and their disciples is mainly built on the Dharma transmissions. The teacher must teach, and the disciples should put it into practice after listening. This is the merit and benefit of relying on a teacher. Not only a disciple following an ordinary teacher should behave like this. Our great teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, who is the protector of all beings in the 3,000-fold universe, didn't use other methods, such as displaying supernatural powers or other ways to benefit sentient beings. His only method to benefit sentient beings was turning the Dharma wheel. He turned the Dharma wheel 3 times to benefit sentient beings. So our teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, also said to his disciples that, "I have already taught you the skillful methods for liberation. Now the liberation depends on you and your own ability. If you don't strive hard, If you don't practice well, even though I'm a Buddha with perfect merits, I can't help you. So it's really important for everyone to understand this approach. Buddha is the sole protector of the triple world, but his true method of guiding sentient beings toward liberation is only through teaching the Dharma. Nagarjuna also said, "Liberation depends on oneself. Others cannot accompany you." Indeed, liberation relies on one's own efforts. It's impossible to depend on others, even if they really want to pull you up or take you to liberation. None of the qualified teachers can do this. Throughout the entire journey of samsara, we come alone and go alone. There was a famous Chinese bhikshuni, a fully ordained nun called Master Yuanzhao. She was known for her heart remaining intact after entering parinirvana. She said, "Come alone, go alone, samadhi alone, practice alone, realize alone, and vajra alone." What does that mean? The meaning can be explained like this. One practices and realizes by oneself to attain the Vajra Buddha state. One can achieve enlightenment by oneself. It's not like saying, "Now I rely entirely on you, my venerable teacher. I hand everything over to you, my living expenses, my body, my realization, no matter what. I give it all to you." Marpa wouldn't have agreed to such requests. So indeed, nowadays it's very praiseworthy that many teachers accept disciples. But why do teachers want to accept disciples? The teacher should think about helping the disciples rather than having them carry water, bags, or other things for the teacher. That kind of person isn't really a disciple. If a teacher genuinely wants to guide disciples, then guide them through the Dharma. I think this way of guiding is very good. Otherwise, other types of relationships may not become the teacher-disciple relationships. The teacher gives the disciple instructions, explaining how to listen to the Dharma and how to apply and practice the Dharma, teaches the disciples to give up negative actions and perform positive deeds. This is the teacher's task, the teacher's action. When the teacher guides disciples, they certainly want to help them. What methods does a teacher adopt to help disciples? For some rare, great, accomplished ones, they may make their disciples work and work every day. And until one day, maybe they'll take off their shoe and slap the disciple's face suddenly. Will the disciple suddenly become enlightened at that moment? This kind of behavior exists for some extremely rare, accomplished masters. But generally speaking, as a teacher, one may feel sad for the disciples because they don't understand any Dharma, nor do they understand anything worldly or beyond worldly. So the only method to guide disciples first is to teach them the rules of listening to the Dharma one by one. During a teaching, one can't wear hats or shoes. One should listen respectfully. One should avoid the 3 defects and 6 stains. When it comes to practice, first start with the preliminary practices before the main practice. Because disciples don't understand the meaning of Dharma. When they hear others say the main practice is perfect, they certainly want to start with it. So the teacher guides them properly, starting with the preliminary practices. The teacher also teaches them how to abandon unwholesome actions and cultivate virtue, how to eliminate the 10 non-virtuous actions, how to perform virtuous actions, meditate on bodhicitta. After listening to the teachings, disciples' reliance on the teacher has really taken effect. Some disciples have followed their teacher for over 10 or 20 years, carrying a bag and running after the teacher every day. But the teacher has never transmitted any teaching to them, not even one verse of Dharma, like abandon evil-doing, practice virtue well. It's such a pity. Such teacher only asks the disciples to build me a temple, build me a stupa, herd yaks for me, and so on, like a feudal lord putting a servant to work every day. But in reality, this is genuinely irresponsible behavior. Just as I mentioned before, for some extremely rare accomplished ones, if they have some profound secret intentions, we ordinary people dare not speculate about their profound actions. But apart from this, generally speaking, in the lineage of Buddha Shakyamuni, when a teacher guides disciples, they should guide them through the Dharma. In the future, when you go to various parts of the world to spread the Dharma, I hope that our Dharma teachers here won't adopt this kind of standard for accepting disciples. I'll cut your hair. I'll give you a Dharma name. From now on, I acknowledge you as my disciple. You acknowledge me as your teacher. Now we have established a solid teacher-disciple relationship. You can't offend me, otherwise you're breaking your vows. Don't use this kind of approach, holding the disciples hostage, since you haven't transmitted even one verse. What vows are there to break? There are all sorts of strange things nowadays. So, when guiding disciples, only after transmitting the Dharma can you be considered as a teacher. At that time, you can be called, quoting the Monkey King Wukong, my master. The above mentioned are about the teacher. Now let's talk from the disciple side. It's up to the disciple to remember those instructions, forgetting nothing, putting them into practice and realizing them. As a disciple, other things aren't important. You should never forget these profound teachings given by the teacher, day and night at all times. Remember the teachings transmitted by the teacher, whether they're from the Sutrayana or the Vajrayana. It's vitally important to remember all these profound Dharma teachings. Do keep this in mind, because as a disciple, indeed, if you don't remember the Dharma, performing other actions doesn't have much meaning. And I often think, the merit and benefit that Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche brings to countless practitioners is beyond imagining, precisely because he brought so many people to an understanding of the Dharma. However, many people nowadays absolutely don't understand this principle. As a disciple, other things aren't important. But you should realize and understand that in front of the teacher, learning Dharma and also practicing according to the teachings should be prioritized at all times. You should put all your effort into practice and practice the teachings given by the teacher. Now, the original text says, on the contrary, though the simple act of listening to the Dharma might bring forth some measure of benefit, however, if you don't retain what you've heard, you won't really grasp the words or their deeper meaning. The teachings will simply slip away. In the end, this is no different from not having heard the Dharma at all. Here, on the contrary means, if those really profound teachings transmitted by the teacher aren't remembered by the disciples at all during listening, due to the disciples' own afflictions or lack of understanding, then the merit is very limited. If they disregard the teachings, throw them away, abandon them all after listening to the Dharma, although there's some merit from listening to the Dharma in front of the teacher, this kind of merit can even be gained by some animals in the world, such as swallows, dogs, or cats. If these animals are among the group of listening to the Dharma at that time, they can also receive some merit from hearing the Dharma. This means that listening in such a way won't lead to any real understanding of the Dharma. Maybe they've gained a little bit, but as soon as they leave the assembly hall, it immediately disappears. Just like red-hot iron turning black as soon as it leaves the fire. For this reason, many people, during the teacher's transmission, should develop a sense of cherishing attitude on every word and sentence given by the teacher. Just like in the past, Patrul Rinpoche, Khenpo Ngawang Pelzang, and many great masters in Han Buddhism who had relied on their teachers for a long time, following their purity of perception, first contemplate and have the faith that the teacher is no different from the Buddha. Then the Dharma transmitted by the teacher is extremely rare. After this, try your best to remember all the teachings given by the teacher. If you really aren't able to remember all in your heart, you can write them down. Some fellow practitioners in the college in the past recorded everything taught by any teacher, back then, on cassette tapes. When they finally left the college, they had bags full of recordings. This also shows their attitude towards listening to the Dharma. Because they really couldn't remember everything, they could only let the recorder remember for them. This is also a skillful method. Indeed, in your process of listening to the Dharma, you should deeply cherish the rarity of these Dharma teachings. If you sincerely cherish these teachings, you'll remember them all. Otherwise, it's apparent from your behavior that you don't value the teachings. For instance, looking forward to the end of the class and thinking, what was this teacher talking about? It goes on and on. It would be better to finish it sooner. If you have such a bored attitude in your heart, you won't cherish the teaching. So it should be said here that if you don't listen attentively, there are still some shortcomings in your conduct and merits. The text here says that it's almost no different from not having heard the Dharma at all. Of course, there's some merit in listening. But from the broader aspect of gaining benefit in Buddhism, the merit is very limited, because learning the Dharma is the most essential purpose of following a teacher. For example, I often think that the relationship between teachers and students isn't formed simply because the teacher acknowledges someone as their student. For instance, assume my teacher is very famous, but I haven't learned even a single word from this teacher. Then although I keep saying, my teacher is Einstein, in reality, it has no meaning at all. If this teacher actually uses various skillful methods to help me learn some knowledge, then establishing this kind of relationship between us is worthwhile. So when a teacher accepts a disciple, we should look at whether this disciple has genuinely learned some Dharma knowledge by relying on this teacher, and whether some afflictions in their mind stream have decreased, and wisdom has gradually increased. In this way, we can say the value of relying on a teacher has been realized. If you spend all day serving the teacher, doing things for the teacher, but you haven't received any wisdom from the teacher's mind stream, then it really isn't meaningful. Especially in this degenerate age, a teacher must spread the Dharma widely, because there are too many people who don't understand the Dharma. It's not reasonable if the teachers don't transmit the Dharma. Of course, it's not necessarily required to have the title of a teacher to spread the Dharma. All lay practitioners and monastics have such responsibility, because the Dharma is our collective wish-fulfilling jewel. It's not just the responsibility of a few gurus to transmit it. In fact, everyone who protects and upholds the Dharma has an undeniable responsibility. So, when conditions are ripe, even if you haven't received the title of Acharya, you can still spread the Dharma at appropriate times and in different situations. Even if you meet a beggar on the street, when you give him a dime, you can say, "Please recite Amitabha Buddha for me." This is also a way of benefiting others with the Dharma, because usually, and a person in need is more open to a simple, heartfelt request like this, and that too is a way of spreading the Dharma. In our daily lives, we must have a heart of respect and protection for the Dharma, the wish-fulfilling jewel, and we should also have a heart to spread it. This is very important. Even when the teachings are remembered, if they become entangled with kleshas or afflictive emotions, what remains can no longer be considered the authentic Dharma. We discussed just now that you should listen to the Dharma first, then remember it. In the process of remembering, you must not mix in any afflictions. This can also be illustrated with a worldly metaphor. For example, when ladling soup into a bowl, if the bowl is upside down, then all the soup will be spilled. Not even a drop will stay inside. If the bowl isn't upside down, but is cracked, all the soup you pour in will leak out. It still can't hold anything if it's not upside down and has no holes. But if there's poison inside the bowl, the soup you pour in will be tainted, hence poisonous to drink, which is also terrifying. So all these faults must be eradicated. This means when we listen to the Dharma, we should both concentrate and remember the teachings given by the teacher. And most crucially, don't have various afflictions and negative motivations during the process of listening. If such thoughts arise, it's better not to listen at all. For example, if you listen to the Dharma in order to make money or gain fame, with such purposes to listen to the Dharma, actually, it's already laced with poison. If it's poisonous, no matter who takes it, it's still dangerous. Thus, like the peerless Dagpo Rinpoche says, while Dagpo Rinpoche is the founder of the Dagpo Kagyu school in Tibetan Buddhism, he is a very important figure in the Kagyu lineage and is an extremely great practitioner and accomplished master among Milarepa's lineage disciples. Rinpoche said this: if the Dharma isn't practiced properly, that very Dharma becomes a cause for lower rebirths. Of course, if practiced properly, the authentic Dharma becomes the cause of liberation. However, some people, due to their lack of wisdom and faith, take the pure Dharma as the object but don't practice it properly. Instead, they engage in improper practice. Originally, the Dharma is like a wish-fulfilling jewel, but some people start selling Buddhist scriptures. Some people rely on the Dharma to commit various wrong deeds. These kinds of wrong deeds will lead them to the lower realms. The Avatamsaka Sutra also says, when a cow drinks water, it becomes milk. When a snake drinks water, it becomes poison. This means some animals, like cows and horses, after drinking water, turn it into milk. whereas venomous snakes are completely different. The water they take into their body turns into poison, which will cause harm to many other beings. Therefore, when we practice virtuous Dharma, we must practice it properly and truthfully. Never practice it in an improper way. Otherwise, you may generate wrong views towards your teacher, or have some prejudices against the Sangha, or against your fellow practitioners. Listening to the Dharma with these attitudes is indeed unreasonable. Not only Tibetan Buddhism has such sayings, Han Chinese Buddhism also holds such views. For example, Master Ji of the past said, generating bodhicitta for fortune and fame is the cause of the 3 lower realms. On the surface, generating bodhicitta should be auspicious. But generating bodhicitta for the sake of becoming famous or gaining wealth also becomes the cause of the 3 lower realms. This is what Master Ji said. In addition, Master Uyi said, a hair's breadth of difference, heaven and earth are set apart. The finest cream can become poison. It's clearly articulated in one sentence. The finest cream becomes poison. The Dharma is like nectar or the finest cream on the surface, that it's very pure and perfect. But if some people don't use it properly, it might become poison, which is very dangerous. So in our daily practice, we must carry out virtuous deeds from beginning to end. I also emphasize that when some people listen to teachings, especially in cities nowadays, try to avoid these improper behaviors. It's not easy for many lay practitioners to gather together in cities. Therefore, on such occasions, you must listen attentively and avoid such as using the Dharma for businesses to make money or engaging in various worldly misconduct while learning the Dharma. Greed, anger, jealousy in mind with various other afflictive emotions should all be eradicated. Because in the short time of listening to the Dharma, we have 3 supremes. At the beginning, we generate bodhicitta. At the end, we dedicate the merit. And in between, we listen with full concentration, free from conceptual fabrication. That's the supreme main practice. The main supreme practice without any conceptualization, as Lala Chudzi Rinpoche explained, is either listening attentively during the process of receiving teachings, or being totally concentrated on the correct view. Keeping concentrated on the correct view means not generating other discursive thoughts of greed or anger when learning or practicing any Dharma, and just accepting it with a virtuous mindset. So, if we possess all 3 supremes in a single class, it seems like just listening in 1 or 2 hours, but actually, you've accomplished something very significant in your life. So here the text also says, rid yourself of every wrong thought concerning the teacher and the Dharma. Because having such wrong thought while listening is still practicing improperly. Originally, listening to the Dharma is very auspicious, but if you constantly resent the teacher during listening, thinking, what is he talking about again? Telling the same story every day, I don't want to hear it. People have different dispositions, but this kind of people create great negative karma for themselves through the Dharma. They think as if the teacher is teaching harmful knowledge every day instead of the beneficial Dharma. Yet when they're fed genuinely harmful content, these same people are delighted. For example, watching TV. TV is nowadays full of greed, anger, and ignorance. But these people are very happy when watching TV, wearing a big smile, even though there won't be any messages on TV that lead you to liberation. However, when they hear the Dharma, they look at the Dharma teacher with particularly contemptuous eyes, as if they really resent the teacher. This shows that their bad karma is manifesting. They're creating negative karma through the true Dharma. No matter who it is, as long as what they teach is entirely virtuous Dharma, even if they're ordinary people, when they're teaching the Dharma, there's no difference between them and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. As I talked about Milarepa's instructions the day before yesterday, this is how it is. So there's no need to treat the teacher as malicious, because what they're transmitting to you is virtuous Dharma, not how to kill or steal. Arising misconstrued thoughts towards the teacher and the Dharma is terrifying. Criticizing or abusing spiritual companions with pride and contempt is also terrible. Thinking, what does this person know? The person next to me is bad, the one on the left. The one on the right is also a bad person. The one in front is very greedy. The one behind is very moody. Everyone is bad. Only I'm marvelous. I'm like a sandalwood tree among other plantain trees. This is actually the arrogance of considering oneself to be the greatest. Such bad thoughts are all causes of lower rebirths. When listening to the Dharma, everyone should eradicate arrogance and have a respectful and devout heart towards all Dharma friends, Dharma teachings and teachers. Therefore, it's necessary to abandon all impure defilements. It's like a container. If you clean it thoroughly, then it can hold anything, and whether it's nectar or medicine. If the container isn't cleaned properly, whatever you put inside might end up becoming poisonous. So before everyone listens to the Dharma, Patrul Rinpoche requires us to examine our own mind stream. Do we have the defect of listening in a distracted way? Do we have the fault of not concentrating our minds? Do we have the fault of listening with mixed afflictions? These three defects of the vessel are very frightening. We must clean them thoroughly. So, starting from tomorrow, before everyone listens to the teaching, check if your Dharma vessel has been cleaned. If it's not, you should try every means to wash and wipe it well with the towel of mindfulness and alertness. Otherwise, you may listen with great effort, but end up creating significant negative karma due to some negative thoughts, which isn't worthwhile at all. We must practice in accordance with the Dharma. Okay, that's all for today's teaching.
Bandara Banma Sadar